You're listening to Tech Talks, a podcast by the Technology Education Collaborative. TEC is an Arizona nonprofit that empowers people with useful information about the technology they use each and every day. Today we're sitting down with David Koontz. Hello, David.
Hi.
Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
So the way this works is we ask everybody the same 5 questions, and we just want to find out what a day in the life is like.
Okay.
All right, so the first question's an easy one. What's your title and position?
I'm a senior software engineer. That's, I think, title and position, really.
Okay.
Company's not that fancy.
Fair enough. And what does that mean? So what specifically do you do on a daily basis?
So I guess I can clarify. I'm a senior software engineer that works on the front end. We are divided up into teams that kind of traditionally have owned part of our application, little slices of the application, and that's front end and back end combined. So I work on what formerly was the compliance team. We're becoming a little more cross-domain. They're trying to mix it up a little bit. So in terms of what I do on a daily basis, we have a product owner that is working with our various internal customers. So we are servicing the other departments that go out and actually make money, that actually keep the company, in business. And they have various needs that they need. From a sales perspective, we do a safety compliance for large companies, like for a vendor's going to come on site, and you want to make sure that they actually know how to go up on a tall, electrical pole and not electrocute themselves or, break things. It's usually mostly around the safety of the people who are coming to do the work, and a little bit less about they're not going to break things because we have, liability insurance and stuff. So the goal is to reduce any kind of casualties. And unfortunately, these are the kinds of industries where those sorts of things happen. High voltage electrical, chemical, heavy industrial, confined spaces, things like that. So we have a lot of need to do things like audits of their safety manuals, things like that, right? And so my team historically has supported all that. So we have a product owner that goes and talks to all those different departments that need to deal with that, and they get the request list that's 10 million miles long and is way more than any team could ever do in 100 lifetimes, of course. And they work with the internal departments, their customers, to boil that down into, okay, what are the 3 most important things you have, right? And if we did this, does it really have a value? And they're trying to become a little more metrics driven around, do we just kind of think that has value, or can we show that actually has value, or are we just kind of guessing here, or do we have some sort of data to back this up? And then they come to us and they work with us to develop a set of a little more formal acceptance criteria around what should this thing do. And then part of my job as a senior is to be on those calls or those meetings with our team's almost exclusively remote. We have a few people in an office in Southern California, and then the rest of us are kind of spread all over. So all our calls are online.
Sure.
Even the people who are in the office, they'll all individually get on their stations. Every once in a while you have a couple people in a room together, but for the most part everyone's individually on. So we get on calls with our product owner, and then we work out. They're not technical usually. They're products, so they're kind of at this intersection between business and a little bit of tech, and they're more in a management, kind of project management capacity. And so we work with them to sort of explain or clarify, that's easy, that's hard, this would actually be way worse than that in terms of complexity, and if we could combine these 2 things, we could do it as one thing, and it's really not that much more complex than doing, we could do 3 instead of 1, those sorts of things that they would not realistically have any insight into. You wouldn't expect them to. And so we work out our acceptance criteria, and then we can put some sort of estimate on it so that they can sort of budget our team's time across all the different internal clients that have demands on it, that want things. And they can say, okay, we're going to give this much of sort of features to this team, we're going to give this much features to this team, and then they're given their marching orders by higher-ups who have decided that this quarter maybe we're going to focus more on this side versus that side. We get some sort of high-level objective of where we should go. So we get all our what are called user stories written out, and the acceptance criteria put on them, and we've given them some sort of estimate, and then finally they can be assigned into a particular period of work. We call them sprints because they use Scrum. I keep advocating for Kanban, but they're pretty locked in on Scrum. And but either way, you would have a backlog of priority items. These are the next few things that should be worked on in order to get some goal done, completed. And they're going to be assigned out to an individual or maybe two people as a pair. And then every day you're going to come in and you're going to have a current thing you're working on and a few things kind of in your backlog, and you're going to pick it up and you're going to move it forward as far as you can that day. So today.
I'm going to deviate a little and add a side sub-bonus question. And I'm going to ask you, so what percentage, and I know it probably vacillates, but what percentage-ish would you give that you spend time in meetings and kind of doing more of like the business workflow versus actual technical work? Just to give someone who wants to get into this an idea. And then sub question, how impacted is that by your seniority? Is it that you do less technical work as you become more senior?
Great question. This company, I think, is quite good relative to other companies I've been at. And I would say I spend 10 to 20% of any given day in meetings, tops, unless it's a very dedicated week where we're doing planning. Like quarterly, they do kind of a planning week that's like dedicated to that purpose. And so it's all about taking a huge backlog of things and breaking them down and kind of doing that work. So on any given day, it might be just a half-hour meeting, even 20 minutes. It kind of just depends on what's going on. A lot of times we try to sort of, eat the elephant one bite at a time. So there's a lot of, there's a story, it's coming in maybe 2 months, and we're going to meet for half an hour each week for the next 4 weeks, just to kind of like chip away at it, have some time to think about it, maybe go ask, because usually the result of these meetings is, well, there's some questions we have to answer to know if it should be A or B. We just don't know. We need to go find someone who worked on that, who's a back-end engineer maybe, because I have front-end experience, but I don't know the back-end very well. Or maybe the back-end people on our team don't know that, or they couldn't attend. So there's a lot of times we have to go and answer questions. So it's not the kind of thing that we can do, just give us 4 hours and we'll just blast out the whole thing.
Sure.
We kind of have to do it bit by bit. So it tends to be a fairly small amount, 10, 20% tops.
Okay.
On any given day, it might be a little bit higher, a little bit lower. And then for me, I do get pulled into more meetings, but we tend to invite everyone as optional, and our junior developers on our team tend to attend those because they are very interested in sort of being included and knowing what's going on. Okay. And our team has 2 seniors and 3 juniors. Well, like 2 juniors and like a mid. Like she started as kind of a junior 2 years ago, and now I would say she's definitely more like at the mid-level. And then we have people who just moved over from QA, for example, maybe 6 months ago. Okay. And then we have a back-end engineer who cross-trained in front-end, and he's learning a completely different language, a whole different paradigm. Yep. And so he's kind of he's a senior developer in the sense of like he's been developing for a long time, but he's very junior because he hasn't spent much time doing front-end kinds of things. So browser issues, just the kinds of things you might run into as a front-end engineer. That's not super in his wheelhouse. He just doesn't have a lot of traditional experience with it.
Sure. Okay. Good answer. Thank you. All right. And then, so next question. So what is your least favorite thing about your job? Because everybody has something they don't particularly love.
Definitely. So I have to pick one, right? Yeah. And I'm not like, crapping on my job or anything. It's actually quite great. But there's, always many faceted things for something this complex. My least favorite thing is probably that testing is, so we have dedicated QA people on our team, which is fantastic. I love that. Some companies are like, have the devs be the QAs, and I always just shake my head like those are different skills. It is a skilled position. It's a whole different thing, and to expect someone to be good at both of those means they're probably going to be kind of slightly mediocre at both.
And just to clarify for people who are just entering the field or just want to learn more about it, QA is quality assurance.
Yes.
Okay.
And their job is to break the stuff that we are sitting there with our smile and our thumbs up saying, it works, trust me. And they go, I'll be the judge of that. And then they click, and they're like, look, it breaks over here. And we're like, how did you, but I test, okay, thanks. And we are actually quite appreciative because they catch all these issues before they ever get out to a customer, before they get to product. So it's internal to our team. So before the other teams, and there can be a little bit of politics about, hey, why does your team just create really buggy features, right? They protect us from that. They like kind of our reputation as a development team by making sure that we catch those things internally and fix them, and the rest of the world doesn't even have to know that they ever happened.
I hadn't thought about that facet of it before. That's actually really insightful. Yeah.
So I love having dedicated QA. But one of our issues is that we don't have a lot of QA resources relative to the surface area, and our area with like audits and stuff like that are very complex. It's probably the most complex aspect of the application. It's the oldest part of the application, which is its own set of issues. So my biggest thing I dislike is the difficulty with which we can carry out like a really robust test suite. And I have been talking to people, and there is an effort to automate more of the testing, but that's relatively slow. So it's sort of like you can throw resources at it to some degree, but then those automated tests can be also very brittle and break on you all the time, and we are changing the app a lot. It evolves since I've been on this team for 2 years. We've changed the UI, we've changed it again, and that's all. I'm not complaining. That's normal. We tried a thing. It works in this way. It doesn't work in this way. We thought the customers would love this, and it turns out no one's using the feature, or it doesn't actually make this process any better, or people are still spending a ton of time doing these things, and we're still getting support calls about it. And it's kind of like, well, clearly that's not giving them the information they need, so we need to try something else. So there is a natural. I feel sometimes developers are kind of like, oh, the product people, they can't just get it right the first time. It's like who gets anything right the first time if it's sufficiently complicated? So we're gonna make changes to our UI. It's gonna happen, but that breaks all your tests. And so we have this issue of it can be very difficult to write your code. What I love to do is write the code, run the tests, and then see if they work. And some people say, well, write unit tests, do test-driven development, things like that. And none of these issues that I have any issues with get caught by unit tests. This is all much larger level, like integration testing, functional testing kind of thing. And that's the place where I am very hopeful that like maybe AI can actually help us out here and start to do. We have a hackathon coming up, and my project that I'm running is doing local test running through Selenium based on the written acceptance criteria, the human language acceptance criteria, so that the AI runner reads the acceptance criteria and executes the actions of the acceptance criteria. And that will do two things. One, it'll show us where our acceptance criteria is lacking because we didn't specify a step. And that can be really useful because that can surface, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. And none of us thought about it. You get 6 people in a room and we're all kind of nodding our heads, yeah, this looks good. And then, the theory meets reality, and you hit the brick wall, and all of a sudden, like, oops, that actually doesn't work because of this thing. So it would help us do some of that, and then also it would give us a way to validate our features at an earlier stage without asking QA to manually go through their script that they have, where they have a 15-point checklist that they're going boom, 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 and hitting, and they're very meticulous and precise about doing that. But that is a limited resource. So you cannot just scale that up. They only have so many hours in a day. Yeah. And we can throw some machines at it to maybe go down some other paths that are at least a first pass, so that it's done that first before we ever bring it to the QA, so we're not wasting their time.
I think that's one of the best examples of utilizing AI for impactful efficiency that I've heard yet, and I've had several huge AI projects, and I've been immersed in it for about at least 10 months now. Mm-hmm. And I have to tell you, that is probably one of the best use cases I have yet heard. Just for what it's worth.
I'm sure I'm not the only one working on this. There must be.
No, I have. There's lots of ideas on using AI and how to use it, and you can create an efficiency without actually increasing productivity or operational value, right? Mm-hmm, like something can be more efficient, but that doesn't do anything,
right?
And I think that's something that gets lost in that discussion a lot. But that's a different podcast. So, anyways, but I have to say that's very. I like that. All right, so. On a brighter note, what is your favorite thing about your job?
My favorite thing about the job, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to split it.
It's okay.
So there's a technical and there's a non-technical.
Fair enough.
So my non-technical is absolutely the team that I work with. We have a company, and I can only speak kind of to my little department. The developers I can't speak to. It's a very large company. But within our engineering team, there is a lot of camaraderie. The UI team has its own sort of guild, weekly meeting, chat channel, teams, and all that kind of stuff. So there's a sense of like, this is our code base. We own this. We got to like make it the nicest place to live that we can. And all of us here, none of us were here at the beginning. So we've all inherited this thing. Okay. So it's it's only 7 years old, but it was also built very quickly to get something running before they ran out of money, kind of a deal. So we have a lot of that kind of lying around. And it was also written by people who didn't know the language very well. So there's a lot of sort of idiomatic issues of, we probably wouldn't have designed it that way if it was us today doing this. We also have the benefit of hindsight. So, of course, we're going to make better decisions than they could when they kind of didn't quite know what they were building yet. So the team, and then the way the company supports people to like move around. So, like I said, we have a QA engineer who moved over. We have at the time a very junior woman who came on as an engineer. We have a back end who's now front end. That's where we're getting our junior engineers.
Yeah.
And you will hire mids and seniors from around. But there's a strong sense of like, yeah, I mean, if anyone has a desire and they want to put in the work, they can obviously like train into this. There's not like, we don't do anything magical. It's just engineering. Yeah, anyone can learn this. So there's a pretty good sense of like mobility and support for that, right? Like I'd never get pushback on, I'm going to go pair with a junior. Junior hits me up and says, hey, do you have a couple hours this afternoon to look over this thing? And I never get any pushback on that. So that's my favorite thing, kind of culture-wise.
Sure, fair
my
enough.
favorite thing technically is that we work in Elm, the Elm programming language, which is a pure functional programming language for web development. So it compiles to JavaScript. You could think of it the same way that TypeScript produces JavaScript. It's kind of its own language and has its own like extra rules, but at the end it becomes JavaScript. Elm is the same kind of thing, except that the rules that it has are extremely different from, say, a JavaScript or a TypeScript, in that it's a pure functional language. So it's closer to like a Haskell or PureScript or things of that nature than it is to Java or C# or JavaScript or Python.
Okay. Fair enough. All right, and then finally, what is one practical thing you think somebody who is looking at getting into your industry, like what is the like practical, actual action-oriented thing you would advise for them to do? Like what's one practical thing somebody could do?
Is this someone who doesn't know anything about software engineering right now and is just kind of interested in this, or someone who's
let's say they're at least enrolled in some like BIT or IT classes or CNT classes, right? So they know they want to quote get into tech, which is basically the demographic this particular podcast segment is targeted to. So they've taken some classes. They know that they like technology. Maybe they enjoy coding. But what I've really found is there's just complete overwhelm. They don't know, should I get certifications? Do I not get certifications? What classes do I want to take? Right? And that's what this podcast is aiming to sort of address, right?
Well, I could speak to software engineering more than the other. I mean, tech is huge, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If someone wants to be a software engineer, if they're like, okay, I think I want to be a software engineer.
Gotcha.
What is something practical they can do? Is there a class they should take, a language they should learn, a meeting they should attend? Like, what do they do?
Yeah, so it's going to depend on location. If you're in a big city, you're going to have vastly higher options, more options for meetups and things like that, and real-life people. There are a ton of online communities, of course. There's Discord groups, Slack groups. So my starting point that I would usually point people towards would be to learn JavaScript and to just start building things. Like it's a little bit like the Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours, which is misunderstood a lot. But there is a truth in there is some number of reps that have to be done to get over certain humps. And a good example of this would be when a junior programmer. So I taught for a bunch of years software engineering, like at the college level, and a very common occurrence would be, let's say, students in there, like through their first year of like a 4-year program, and so we're starting to write some real programs now. Where these are not 10, 15, 100-line programs; these are maybe hundreds, if not 1,000 lines of code. They would have a problem, and they would sit there and they would puzzle on for a while, and eventually they'd flag me down, and I'd come over, and they would say, "Oh, it's not working," and I would just like immediately point at something, and they'd say, "How did you do that?" It's like, "Well, I noticed that you weren't indented right, and you're missing a semicolon here, and there's not a curly brace here." And they say, "How do you do that?" And it's like, 20 years of looking at this. That's how I do it. It's not a trick, there's not a mnemonic I memorized or something. It's just I've looked at a lot of code over a lot of time. And so there's elements like that at the beginning, everything is so hard. It's just so difficult to get anything to work that those things do get easier I'm not saying everything gets easy, but certain elements become internalized a little bit more to where it kind of fades away and you don't see the semicolons and the curly braces. They're there, and you would actually notice if they're not there or if they're misplaced, but you're not spending much brain power dealing with those, because those are the absolutely, completely uninteresting parts of programming. In fact, those aren't even programming. That's just typing. That's just satisfying the compiler, right? It's like grammar. I guess you could argue grammar's part of writing, but, it's maybe the least interesting part of
it's a more mechanical part of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So those are never part of the interesting problem you're solving.
Yeah.
Right. They're a thing you have to do to make the computer happy. So getting over that hump, I think, is pretty difficult for a lot of people when they're first starting out. They think this isn't for me. I can't do this. It's too hard. And I would just encourage people that there is a horizon. You do eventually get to where you can see the end of that, and it starts to become easier. But it does take a certain amount of time. So whether you're writing something, a big project, small project, just be out there starting to work on things. Have a goal that you can fail at. So it can't be like, my goal is to write code. Okay, I mean, how do you know if you succeed or failed? I mean, there is value in saying, I'm just going to write code every day. That's perfectly valid. But you need a goal that you can fail at so that you can then say, what did I not know that I need to learn? Or what do I need to go learn to finish this project?
Sure.
I want to write a web page that uses an API like a Google Maps API and talks to a different web page. That's a different challenge than saying I want to make a web page that as the user clicks on things, it's updating things and hiding and showing things and animating. Those are two different problems to solve, both on a web page, and they're both useful things, and eventually you will know how to do both of those. Mm-hmm. But you kind of pick a thing, go after it, and don't alter your criteria too much to make it easier to do. Yeah. Like figure out what you don't know, and then use that as a justification to then go learn that thing. And you can get in a situation where the thing you've picked is maybe too big for you right now. Right?
Sure.
It's too big of a challenge. You didn't realize that integrating OAuth authentication into your app is like this gigantic thing that makes senior engineers cry. Okay, maybe if you get down that rabbit hole, you do decide to not go down that path. But smaller, bite-sized things. Pick something, go after it. There's going to be tons you don't know. You'll learn along the way, and then you will have a singular thing that now you know how to do at some level of competency. Pick a different thing, an unrelated. Don't do that same thing again. Pick an unrelated thing, and you just do that for years.
Okay, fair enough. And finally, what about non-work stuff? Do you have any passion projects? Anything you're working on? Anything you're building, doing? Any orgs you volunteer for?
Yeah, I have way too many.
That you'd like to share?
I'm
you want to pick a favorite one?
I'm an independent filmmaker, so I do film production here in Phoenix. Mostly, we've done short films. I've worked on some features as crew, and we're trying to get our own feature off the ground. So
Very
that's
cool.
something that we do quite a lot. That's totally unrelated to software. And then I also love engineering in general. So I tend to do a lot of product development, kind of like inventory kinds of things. I guess inventor is the best term for this.
Sure.
It's like I see a problem, I could fix that, or I think I can fix that. And so I'm in Autodesk Fusion 360 modeling something, doing test print. I do tons of 3D printing. I have a workshop in
Maker stuff, yeah.
But it's usually towards the end of making something that can be a product or can be useful. Some things are one-offs, but so I we built a catio at our old house for our kids to go outside, and it's typical wood frame, nail it or screw it together and staple chicken wire around the outside, right? And there's all these things that didn't work great. If the cat throws up inside, you have to pry it off and clean it up, and you can't reconfigure it once you made it. So I thought, I'll make a modular version of that with 3D printed connectors and standard lengths, and now you can make it any size and configuration. And that's been 2 years now of 15 iterations of the connector because it's always not quite good enough or not quite strong enough. And now I have a version outside that my cats use that's gone through an Arizona summer to test the material property. How's it going to hold up over 1 year of being outside in the sun, things like that. So I spend a lot of time kind of on film and these kind of inventory things in addition to software.
Do they feel like two different types, when you're doing two different types of engineering, does it excite you in the same way, or do they feel like two completely different things?
They're definitely different for me.
Yeah.
The tactileness. So the thing that I love about the more physical, mechanical engineering side is that it's so immediate. I can have an idea, whip up a sketch, design, print it, and that might take like 4 or 5 hours. But at some
Sure.
point, I'm going to be able to fit two things together, and oops, my tolerances are off, or I didn't
Yeah.
account for this, and I go back and I do another revision. But I'm seeing things that are physical and tactile that I can try out and see how they work together very quickly. And with software, it's sort of like none of it works for a very long time, and then it finally comes together, and now it all works together because you have all the pieces that you need. And up until that point, it's difficult to know kind of how close you are in many cases. Some things you can be more certain of than others, but
Yeah.
you kind of have to, in many cases, like the back end and the front end have to come together in a certain way, and that's a point where you're not quite sure if you've missed a detail, you now have this like integration problem.
Sure.
Where you have to like put these things together, and you're going to have to go back and do work in one side or both. And I feel like, I guess I feel like I have more firm footing in the physical world because the constraints are so much worse. In software, I mean, Fred Brooks said this. He said that like we make things out of thought stuff like clouds, and we just kind of will it into being and make it into whatever shape we want. And that's beautiful and wonderful and true to a degree. And the downside is that there's no rules, basically. You're inventing
Yes.
your own physics system for your world and having to worry about all these issues. Whereas
see that.
in the physical world, since so much more is constrained by physics, which is often the thing that we're fighting against, like, darn, it'd be nice if it was light and strong and cheap and 15 other criteria. It's like, well, no material does all those things, so, plan B. So we're fighting against the physical
Only
world.
energy didn't have heat.
Exactly. Well, there was no loss to, there's no entropy. So the physical world both is our constraint that we're fighting against, trying to improve our solution against, and also a thing that keeps our solutions grounded in a way that I think I suffer from this, and I would assume other software people suffer from this, is that it can be so abstract in your head that you're kind of just like keeping this like cathedral in your head, and when you can't hold all those pieces together, it can kind of all fall apart, and you just don't understand how all these things work together. Where in a physical system, usually you can lift the lid and kind of peek inside and have a pretty okay sense of what's going on. And there's a nice warm feeling that comes as a result of that.
I could see that. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it, David. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.